Welcome to Pragmatism in Practice, a podcast from Thoughtworks where we share stories of practical approaches to becoming a modern digital business. I'm your host, Kimberly Boyd, and I'm here with Rachel Laycock, Thoughtworks Global Head of Enterprise Modernization, and Mike Mason, Thoughtworks Global Head of Technology, to talk about one of the topics on all executives' minds today, technical debt. Rachel, Mike, thanks so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah. So, technical debt, I feel like it's been dominating in the news here for the past couple months, but maybe just to get us started, both of you are experienced technology leaders, have worked with a variety of client organizations over your careers. Why is tech debt something that all business leaders, not just technology leaders, the CEOs, the CFOs of the world, should care about today?
Sure. So tech debt, it's ultimately a metaphor. And why do we need a metaphor is because software is really abstract. So it's hard to see, in a very kind of straightforward way, the impact of poor design decisions in the code, right? So whether those decisions are somewhat intentional because of you were trying to get things out the door faster. So it's quite well known that startups and scale-ups have, a lot of technical debt, or you're moving towards tight deadlines, or, hopefully not, but maybe there's just people are like, it's fine, we'll just push it. It'll be okay for now. But that's not my experience of software engineers. They usually want to do the best possible job. And sometimes it's just the software is no longer fit for purpose. So the original ideas of why you designed something the way that you designed it may have changed, right? Your user interactions may have changed. You may have added so many different features onto something that require different load or that have different security requirements, that now you've got this debt that doesn't necessarily, in a very obvious way, show itself to be a product feature. And that's where the challenge comes, right? Because if you're just measuring teams or product people or even business people on the number of features or that they get out and the value that those features create for the business, what you're missing is that there's all what we call these cross-functional requirements, which in the past have called non-functional requirements around things like scalability, the performance of the system, how portable the system is. And there's a whole host of them. I've lost count of how many of these cross-functional requirements that there are. And 10 years ago, we weren't very good at measuring that and showing that to business leaders and saying, hey, if we make this decision, we're going to have issues with load. We're going to have potential security issues. We'll only be able to handle this many transactions in this time frame. Now we have all of these measures, and we call them fitness functions at Thoughtworks, which you can build into your system. And they should become part of your product measures, not just the features, but how resilient basically your product is within the environment that it has to run. And so I think sometimes people almost get lost in the tech debt metaphor or analogy, in that, okay, we'll just pay it off later. But that isn't always the case. You might
treat it like your credit card, right? Don't just.
Well, exactly. I think it's a good metaphor, but some people are, a little more reckless with their credit cards than others. And it kind of matters who's accountable, right? If somebody else is paying off your credit card, let's use the example of say you're lucky enough to have your parents pay off your credit card, you're probably going to continue to be pretty careless. And I map that to, are you holding your business and product leaders accountable for ensuring that the system continues to run in the most effective way for your business, so that you don't have, the catastrophic failures that we've seen, quite a few of lately, and I'm sure we'll continue to see over time, because there's an incredible amount of software in the world now, and not all of it is in great condition. On top of that, there's also other metrics that you can look at, such as how quickly can you onboard new teams and the attrition. We've been talking for years about how hard it is to hire great talent and to keep great talent. If you bring that great talent, and we've seen this many times at Thoughtworks, you bring that great talent onto a creaking system with loads of problems, and they can't, do their job to the best of their ability, they don't want to stay, right? So there is lots of different things that you can measure, like business metrics, basically, that you make more than just the technology team accountable for. And that way, you can both create visibility of what the problems that the tech debt is or isn't causing, and collaboratively solve them.
I think something that you said there is worth emphasizing, which is there's different kinds of tech debt. So sometimes there's a deliberate decision to just kind of do something quickly for today. But sometimes things kind of sneak up on you because you can build stuff well with all the information that you have today, but then tomorrow the business landscape could change. Your business strategy could change. The things that you're trying to do could change, and those changes might mean that the thing that you have, the software asset, is no longer exactly what it should be or what it would have been if you had known how the future was going to pan out. And that's not anybody's fault, actually. I think that's one of the mysterious things about software is because you can change it and use it for lots of different things, people get a bit frustrated that they have to continue to invest in it. Like why is it that I have to keep pumping money into this thing? And I think it's because a lot, the environment in which that software finds itself changes so often as well. And so if you have a changing business strategy, you need to have a changing technology strategy to keep up with that. And when you change your tech strategy, that can often, mean that you have some implied technical debt there as well.
So what I've heard from both of you is really that, best intentions when software is being built, but over time it really can become this invisible drag on the business. And what organizations need to be thinking about doing is, how do we remove that invisibility and shine the light on it? I heard you speak a bit and allude to metrics. Is that the way to really, bring this problem to light and have everyone have a little bit more awareness of what potential tech debt or tech drag exist in their organizations?
Yeah, I think it's one of the important parts of it. It's not the only answer. And you're right. The most critical thing, I believe, is creating visibility. And that's what we've missed in the past, right? So technical teams would be like, oh, we have all these problems, but they weren't able to easily translate that into the impact that has on the business. And so they might get shooed away or like, look, we've got to get features out the door. We've got to do X, Y, Z. So I think metrics, both qualitative and quantitative, can help with that. And there's a lot of great tools and systems out there that can help you do that. But there's also, metrics like I said earlier, like looking at the, attrition and retention of your best talent and understanding, why people leave, why people stay. And I think that those are the kinds of things that, it's not necessarily measurable. It's more qualitative. But you have to look across all the different axes of, sure, there's all these cross-functional requirements. There's the development teams. There's, downtime of your systems, right? And how long it takes for them to recover. I think the DORA metrics cover some of that. So there's been a lot of advancements in the last 10 years in terms of like ways that we can create visibility into the impact of the technical debt that might be in the system and how things might need to be changed, not just, okay, we want to build this new feature, we want to onboard this many new customers. Oh, what does that mean from a cross-functional requirement perspective? What does that mean from a security perspective? And not just do like the absolute bare minimum, but do what's needed to be done to really continue to not only get that feature out the door, but keep that feature running long-term.
And you can also do stuff like value stream mapping as a technique there, where you look at the entire process of going from an idea or a business requirement all the way through to actually having something running in production and creating value. And you can look at all of the steps there and say, hey, does this step really need to take this long? Why is it taking this long? And asking that question usually unearths quite a lot of tech debt, but can also unearth situations where, for example, different parts of the organization are waiting on each other the whole time, or there's some kind of bottleneck to go through a test environment. We see that often, that you have to get into the one magical environment before you can go into production, that kind of thing. So value stream mapping can be like a useful kind of generalized technique to look at all of those things and figure out what's the slow part.
And does that work? So we're talking a little bit ideal state, like here are things you should be asking and measuring. Maybe let's assume organizations haven't done that. Does it work just as well to kind of do it retroactively as it does from setting that up, from the get-go when you're creating new software, kind of asking those questions, establishing those metrics, and, doing some sleuthing to find out the answers to them retroactively?
Well, yeah, I think sleuthing is a great word to describe that, actually, because, if I was coming into a situation as a technology leader, one of the things that I would want to figure out is what's working well and what's not working so well in this new situation in which I find myself. Value stream mapping is a great way of doing that. And, you don't have to use a big fancy name. Just poking around and asking good questions is often achieves the same outcomes. But yeah, you do kind of have to keep an open mind. I think a lot of people go in with a preconceived notion of what the problem is. You actually really need to sort of keep more of an open mind and get the situation and also the people involved in it to tell you what the problem is. I think a lot of the time, folks have an intuitive understanding of what's not ideal about their situation. Like people don't intend to get into a situation where they're kind of stuck and going slower than they want to be, and sometimes you can almost use the emotions that people are feeling as a kind of clue. So if people are feeling frustrated, right, that probably means they're also feeling not very productive, which means something's getting in their way from going faster. And so, like, frustration, I think, is an emotion that we should all pay close attention to, because it means someone's trying to do a good job, but things are getting in their way.
Yeah, and also that they're maybe not getting heard, right? That they've it's come up so often when I've done their value stream exercises. And when you get to a certain point where something, it takes a long time and it has to go for an approval here and approval there and everything's manual, you start to hear that frustration in people's voices. And someone will say something like, I've been saying this for ages and no one listens, or they might be very kind of despondent. And if you dig into that, it's because, like, I've been raising this for 6 months. I've been raising this for a year. I've been raising this for 2 years. Like, nothing has been done about it. And again, like Mike said, those are things to dig into and look out for. And of course, it's definitely better to start with, having great intentions. But I think we all start with great intentions. And a lot of the software is older. We've come a long way in the industry over the last sort of 5 to 10 years in terms of how we can measure these things. But I will say that the baselining effort is often very hard. And it can have diminishing returns trying to get really, really accurate numbers, right? So I think it's good enough to have like a ballpark of like, this thing takes 3 days or this thing takes 3 weeks. That's a long time. Let's try and get that down to 2 days or 1 day or 2 weeks or 1 week. Because I think once you start measuring, what matters is trends over time. Like, are things improving in the way that you want them to for your business? And I think that's another important thing. Like, getting that first snapshot is difficult retroactively. You just do the best you can with what you have, because that's really your starting baseline. And from there, you're looking at how things evolve.
So there's really no magic metrics formula. It's better just to get started and see what you can uncover than focusing on perhaps if it's the perfect mix. Is that fair to say?
I think one thing that I often use is kind of a magic quadrant sometimes with these, of like the impact of something versus like the feasibility of or ease of making a change to it, right? So just there can be things that are very high impact that are just going to be so difficult to improve on. So we call that kind of looking for the low hanging fruit of like something that's high impact that you can start to baseline fairly quickly or improve fairly quickly. Because the other thing is if some of these challenges have been going on for a long time and your technical teams are frustrated or they're despondent, you also need to try and find some quick wins of like, look, we've improved this testing thing that used to take 3 days to run now only takes 2 hours. That's going to help people a lot, because that's a faster feedback cycle of like, okay, now the tests have gone through. 2 hours later, I can go back and see what's come up in terms of challenges or bugs or issues within the system.
I think also you want to look out for what I'd call conflicting metrics. or a metric, but where two teams might disagree on how they want to improve that metric. I was working with a large retail chain, and they had some metrics around conversion of shopping carts into orders. And so obviously to get the most orders through that kind of a system, you want a streamlined process. You want to make it easy for everybody to pay for their order and kind of go from their shopping intention to actually, getting revenue from them as a business. But one of the other departments was producing a company branded credit card. And they wanted to put the credit card sign up into the checkout process, because they wanted to get more signups. So their particular bit of the business was looking for this metric around credit card signups. But the other piece of business was looking at metrics around cart conversions. And as soon as you put the credit card thing into the cart flow, you reduce the conversion rate because it's extra friction for the customer. It doesn't matter how well you do it. It's always going to cause a little bit of a drop off. So you've got a situation there where you have two different parts of the organization kind of disagreeing on what the right metric is, or even having kind of conflicting metrics there. So I think that's something to look out for when you start trying to measure stuff, is that because you get what you measure. So you've got to be careful what you measure, because otherwise, you can set people up against each other, or even, get into situations where people are gaming metrics and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, don't leave us hanging on that story. How did they resolve the conflicting metrics? Like what was the resolution there?
I don't think there was a solution, only a resolution, an agreement that this is the way that we'll work together, and this is how both departments can be successful on this. There are a ton of, I think that's another thing with, certainly within IT, everybody's looking for a solution all the time, when in fact things are not as easy as that. Sometimes you just have to create a good path forward that everybody can live with, that's not actually optimal for any one individual.
Compromise.
Compromise, exactly.
But I think the critical thing there is that these are compromises that weren't necessarily being made in the past, right? Is that the issues that the technical teams were raising were not being raised in a way where it was obvious the business impact, right? So there wasn't a compromise. It was always what seemed like the best business decision, as in, get this feature out this door, hit that deadline, make that change. And all of those other challenges, those cross-functional needs, those scalability needs, those were like second-class citizens that were really not in the conversation. And then you bring all of that together, and sure, the decisions might get harder because you've got more variables, but hopefully you're making better decisions, even if, they're not perfect all around, because, most decisions aren't.
Amen to that. I want to, bring up the topic of developer experience. I actually know we're chatting tech debt today, but in hearing you talk about just kind of the happiness and the mood of your technical talent, your engineering teams, and how that can help you kind of get to the source of frustration and what's creating some of this technical debt. With developer experience kind of exploding as such a popular topic and opportunity space in the past few years, it seems to me that, tech debt should probably be a part of that discussion, or your developer experience, what you're hearing from that should feed into how you're treating your technical debt problem. Is that fair to say? Is that, how you're thinking about it when you're talking about the two topics today?
I think developer experience, in my mind, comes from trying to enable the development teams to move faster, right? To achieve some of the DORA metrics that are out there in terms of like faster time to value and faster development time. And I also think it's a lens of bringing kind of product thinking to the development team. So treating those teams, we're building features for your business as, customers. And in doing so, starting to create tools for them whereby they don't have to continuously rebuild the same things over and over, when really it's a cross-functional requirement that they could just build as part of the system. And then I think there's tools that have come out of that, like Backstage and others. The challenge is it doesn't cover the full breadth of what I would say non-value add time of what developers do, right? So just because I have a great tool for, building and deploying my software faster, it's not magically going to fix, the cruft in the code. And if there's, a certain, we used to call them God classes, like there'll be a class or an object in there that's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines long, which is suddenly, everything's ended up in there. It's got, 20 to 30 different purposes. And when you make one change to it, everybody's terrified that you updated that one file. Those developer experience tools, they're not going to solve that problem. And so I think there's a lot more to developer experience than the tools, right? The tools are never a panacea. They help a lot. They remove a lot of friction, but there is a whole host of other friction that's in there that's associated with the technical debt that those tools are not going to solve for. You need to think about both.
Yeah, and I just think when we started talking about this years ago, I think we made some mistakes by talking about developer happiness, because in the cutthroat world of being in corporate business, corporate IT, happiness is not actually the right word to use there. But developers are actually happier when they feel productive and effective. So, I mean, I guess the word is kind of useful, but really effectiveness, reducing friction, reducing frustration. Like, the reason that people are annoyed about something is it's taking longer than they think it should, right? Like, the accidental complexity of solving the task is more than the inherent complexity of it. Like, I'm spending 20% of my time actually solving business problems and 80% of my time jumping through hoops or trying to get the pieces to talk to each other or whatever else, all these other things that, as Rachel said, were kind of non-value add. So to me, that's another reason that you should pay attention to that kind of emotional state of someone. So when they're feeling frustrated, they're not productive, that's a big warning siren that you should be like trying to figure out, how can I make these people more productive? Because they will be more effective. They will be happier in their jobs.
Although developer less frustratedness is less of a catchy term than
it's less pithy, yeah.
And we used to talk a lot about clean code as well. And I remember, when I used to help, coach and onboard new graduate developers, I used to always remind them that most code gets read way more times than it gets written. And that means that, that's another not necessarily value add activity if it's not easy to read. Right. And that's where there'll be cruft within a code base of like, somebody's written it with some kind of idiosyncrasies or some, style of coding from way back. And then somebody new comes on, never seen it before, doesn't have the context of why decisions were made. 5 to 10 years later, they look at it and they're like, I don't understand what this is supposed to be. So trying to understand it, trying to find out information, identifying different dependencies. Maybe there's other teams involved. Like, there is this whole host of other things that a developer's doing that isn't just about producing that feature. And so to me, it's a smart business decision to remove as much friction as possible so they can increase the value add activities that they're actually doing. And that's one of the things that we've been really working with our clients lately, is just, what are some of these non-value add activities? How can we measure them? And where would we get the most benefit from reducing the time spent on these non-value add activities?
So speaking of the non-value add activities, for someone who is in the business and not necessarily in the technology arm of an organization, how can they be thinking about managing tech debt well? Is it thinking about those non-value add activities? Is it something else? Like, what levers are available for them to pull to help address this issue?
I mean, I think one of the major things that we need to do is start thinking about things as products rather than as projects that we're working on. So something that Rachel was talking about just now reminded me of this, which is that if you have this kind of revolving door of people who are working on a software system in a project-based mentality, they're going to do what they need to do to get that thing out the door for the project, but not be thinking about the long term. Whereas if you can apply more of a product thinking approach to it, so even for internal pieces of software, and saying to yourself, this is an asset that we are going to do a good job of building product features, building the product in a sustainable way for the long term. To me, the technical health of such a thing is part of the creation of a long-term asset. And we have product managers who are worrying about what features should go in this product, and who is my customer base, and how do I make this competitive in the marketplace of products. One approach is also is to couple that product management person with a technical product manager who can represent kind of the technical health of the system and help make good trade-offs. Because I think a lot of people hear us talking about tech debt, and I think folks are they get a bit tired of paying all this money to IT to continually fix stuff, and they don't really understand what that is, right? Like, why am I paying $1 million for yet another database upgrade? I don't really understand what I'm getting for that money. If you can elevate the discussion about the investments you need to do for the continued long-term technical health of a product to the same level as the product feature discussions, not that it's the same priority, just that it's in the same conversation, that can go a long way actually to being able to make good trade-offs and say, hey, look, for this particular release, it's more important for us to hit the date and get the thing out the door than it is for us to be looking at this more long-term technical situation. But I know after we've got this release out, we will have a bit more breathing room. We'll be able to prioritize this other stuff. And it allows you to have this kind of give and take within it, rather than just, from my perspective, you end up with a situation where it's always about features and never about the technical quality.
Yeah, and I think that's why people are maybe tired of the tech debt term, is that, that's basically what development teams have been saying for years. It's like, we need this iteration to pay down the technical debt. And it's like, but like, that's not actually what the iteration is for, right? There is a specific outcome, like a negative outcome of not paying down that technical debt. And that's what we need to get to, or that's what we need to create visibility for. And we need to do it in a way that business leaders have enough information to make a decision on that. And I like Jim Highsmith's analogy of like, a car, but you can use it for so many things, right? If you don't take care of your house, like a lot of things start to go wrong. If you don't take care of your car, you don't do the oil change, a lot of things start to go wrong. But in the past, 20 years ago, you might not have had the signals inside of the car to tell you that these things need doing. Now in modern cars, you're driving around and it's almost telling you too much information, right? It's like, you need to do this, you need to do that. And you're like, okay. It's reminding you that like it's been 1 year and you need to take the car back to the garage. And that, I think that changes people's behavior in terms of like how they might look after their vehicle better. Even maybe, with some of the modern technology that people are putting in their house, how they might take care of their house better. But without that, those things need to get done, but then there's nothing nagging you. There's nothing reminding you of the value of doing it. And I think that's really what this is about, is like, let's stop talking about technical debt and talking about what is the problem that this debt is creating, right? Is it people that have to take 2 or 3 times longer to get anything done in this area of the code base because of the technical debt? Or is it that we'll only be able to handle so much load, and in order to, scale even further, we're going to have to pay this much more money, versus if we broke up the system better in a way that was less monolithic, it would be a lot cheaper to create scale and really make the use of the hyperscalers, right? Really get the benefits that the cloud providers have been telling us you would get. You only really get those when you modularize your system. And not a lot of people didn't do the modularizing of the system. You just migrate the system straight onto the cloud. And guess what? It isn't magically cheaper because you've put something huge, full of debt, into the cloud. That's not a panacea. So I think it's about, how do we really elevate what these challenges are? And maybe we're doing ourselves a disservice even talking about tech debt anymore, and saying like, here's some of the core problems that tech debt causes. Which of one of those core problems is, our first concern right now?
Okay, can we come up with a new phrase on this podcast today for tech debt? Like, is it essentially elevating it to, do you want speed? Do you want performance? Do you want whatever X and Y is, and take technical debt off the table entirely?
I wish it was that easy. Any developer will tell you naming things is hard, because it is, especially when it's a global thing and people have slightly different words for things. The other thing is that cross-functional requirements alone, I think there's more than 40 of them. And that doesn't include some of the things we talked about around, the frustration of your developers, how much non-value add time they're spending on work. So it's a tough one to come up with a single name for. So I think tech debt is a fine proxy. But when it comes to talking to your business leaders about what actions or decisions they need to make on it, it's not the tech debt. It's the thing it's the challenge, the problem, the impact of that tech debt that we need to be talking about. And that is a bit more, it's going to be specific to the business, to the product, to that, in our case, to that client.
Well, I think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's the tech debt is the metaphor, and it's really thinking about what is causing the drag on your business and elevating that up to, what those drag levers are and what that's impacting in terms of your ability to create the business value you desire. So if there's one thing for a CEO or a CFO who has maybe, perked their ear up to this problem more in the past few months than they may have lately, what's the one thing they should take away, the one thing they should be asking their technology leaders, their executive teams about technical debt?
I would probably ask, how do we know we're investing the right amount in tackling technical debt? So not tell me what the technical debt is or exactly how long it's going to take to fix, but how do we know we're spending enough time and investment and effort on it so that it's not going to become one of these problems where, a single system melts down and then causes some kind of cascading failure? How do I know that we as an organization are handling this in the right way?
I would build on that and say that I think sometimes organizations still see a technology strategy as an execution plan for technology, right? Things we need to build, things we need to buy. It's not, it kind of goes against the definition of a strategy, right? Which is something that you make decisions on and that you continue to learn from, right? And a roadmap is not a project plan, right? You need to hit those quarter by quarter points and say, are we getting the results that we want? What are the challenges that are in our way? And elevating technical debt into that conversation of, we haven't solved this problem from before, now it's worse. And this is how the projected outcome if we continue to go down this route. Are we okay with that for now? When are we going to revisit that? And to me, this is where that harmonious business and technology strategy should really be working together. Instead of it being, a business strategy, and then there's a separate technology strategy, which is really just a technology execution plan that just goes ahead, and then changes are made to the business strategy. And then we just kind of tell the technology leaders, hey, you need to change your strategy. And there's not a nice feedback loop that really should be in there, because for most modern businesses now, most of them are digital businesses. So that technology strategy really matters. It has a huge impact on your business. So you've got to make it part of the conversation, whether that's, having those technology leaders in those decision-making conversations around the business strategy, whether it's rethinking how the technology strategy is presented, and when you revisit at different milestones, who's in those conversations about how we should continue executing on this. To me, I think that's still one of the fundamental problems, is we have this huge separation between a business strategy and a technology strategy. And that's, to me, it should be a really close feedback loop.
You need to get rid of those adjectives and just have it be the strategy, and it includes both business and technology. Yeah,
maybe that's the answer. The one word game is do away with business strategy, do away with technology strategy. We should all just have a business and technology strategy, put it all on one roadmap, and let's see if we can have a conversation about what the different milestones mean together.
Well, Rachel and Mike, thank you so much for this conversation today. I know I was educated on technical debt, and I think for those listening, don't be discouraged if you feel like you have a lot of that drag on your business, because you just need to do some sleuthing to understand where the frustration is in your organization to help you begin remediating that. And if you get stuck, give us a call. We have got lots of folks who are familiar with how to help you sift through that. But thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Pragmatism in Practice. If you'd like to listen to similar podcasts, please visit us at thoughtworks.com/podcast. Or if you enjoyed the show, help spread the word by rating us on your preferred podcast platform.